Would you survive a day as a slave in ancient Rome? Before we begin, let me know in the comments, what time is it there, and where are you watching from? If you love sleep and calming history, like and subscribe for more sleepy storytelling. Now close your eyes. Let the sound of the fireplace settle into the room. We are traveling back nearly 2,000 years into a world that still echoes in stone ruins and forgotten names. Beneath the marble statues and golden temples of Rome, a hidden world existed, a world of silence, labor, and endurance. This is not a story of emperors and heroes. This is a story of those who served in the shadows, those whose names were not written, the ones history often left behind. Tonight we walk in their footsteps. Let the fire crackle. Let the past speak softly. You are not born in a warm house, wrapped in linen, cradled in love. You are born into dust, into the worn silence of a slave hut. Your mother, herself a slave, holds you quietly, eyes already tired. She knows what your life will be. You will not choose your path. You will not learn letters unless your owner decides it useful. You will not speak freely unless no one is listening. From your first breath, you are considered property. You have no legal identity of your own. In the eyes of Roman law, you are a thing, a possession. You can be sold, traded, punished, or disposed of without cause. There is no court to plead to, no appeal to fairness. Your value lies in your strength, your obedience, and how well you can endure. As a child, you learn not to cry too loudly, not to play too freely. Your first steps are taken on stone floors, your first words spoken in hushed tones. Other children, also born into slavery, become your world. Together, you learn how to carry water, clean chamber pots, and avoid the wrath of overseers. The villa is vast, too vast to ever feel safe. You sleep in cramped quarters, in a corner near the kitchen or the stable. The floor is hard, the air full of smoke, straw, and sweat. Nights are cold in winter, and the blankets are thin. You fall asleep to the sound of animals breathing, and sometimes men crying softly. Your mother teaches you how to listen, really listen, for footsteps, for shifting moods, for the tone of voice that means danger. A good slave, she says, is one who sees without being seen, hears without speaking. And so you grow, your childhood marked not by wonder, but by awareness. If your owner is cruel, you learn to move like a shadow. If your owner is indulgent, you learn to flatter. Either way, you do not belong to yourself. Even your thoughts begin to bend around that reality. You do not dream of freedom. You dream only of being useful, of surviving another day without being sold. You hear stories from others, of children taken from their mothers and sold to another estate, of families broken apart without warning. There is no protection, no promise, only the will of those who own you. One day you are taken to the market not to shop, but to be displayed. You are inspected like an animal. Your teeth, your shoulders, your hands. A man pokes your ribs and asks questions as if you cannot hear them. How strong is this one? How many years can he work? You are sold. Your name changes or is erased entirely. You do not belong to the same household anymore. Your mother fades behind you, her voice calling once, then silence. You ride in a cart or walk for miles. A new home, a new master, a new role, and still you are not truly seen. You are labor in a tunic. You are expected to work without complaint, to sleep where you are told, to eat last, to speak only when spoken to. This is how life begins for you in ancient Rome, not with ambition or adventure, but with obedience, with bowed head, with quiet strength. The fire crackles beside us. Let it burn softly. Let it carry this story forward. The sun rises early in the Roman countryside, and it does not rise for you. You are already awake, stirring in the dark long before the sky begins to pale. The floor is cold beneath your bare feet. Your limbs are stiff from sleeping on a straw mat, barely wide enough for your body. There is no time to stretch or speak. You move by habit, because to hesitate is to risk punishment. If you are one of the many enslaved in a rural estate latifundia, they call it your day begins with labor so repetitive and exhausting that your muscles have forgotten rest. The fields are endless, wheat, olives, grapes. You know every furrow in the soil, every stone that juts up under the plow. The overseer is already shouting orders before the light fully arrives. His voice is sharp, his staff sharper. You are given a small piece of bread before work begins. Some are lucky to get a few olives or a sip of watered wine. Your body is lean from work, hardened not by training or discipline, but by endless necessity. There is no time for illness. If you are too slow, the others suffer. The overseer believes in collective punishment. Your hands are calloused and your back aches constantly. The tools are crude, the soil is hard. You work side by side with others, but you rarely speak. There is a rhythm to the silence. Each man or woman locked in their own world of endurance. You share glances, nods, the occasional whisper, but the work keeps your heads down. The sun climbs high. Sweat stings your eyes. There is no shade, no pause. You carry bundles of harvested crops across the field. You pull weeds. You chase off birds. You do whatever you are told without resistance. That is the rule. That is survival. If you work in a Roman city, the labor is no lighter. You may be a cook in a busy domus or a cleaner of public baths. Perhaps you serve a merchant or tend to the needs of a wealthy family's children. But no matter your task, the rhythm is the same. Up before the sun, to bed after dark. No rest, no reward. Only repetition. Inside city homes, your movements are even more restrained. You walk quietly. You bow your head. You are not to make eye contact unless invited. You are always within arm's reach of correction, verbal or otherwise. The master's moods determine your safety. His guests are your burden. His boredom is your danger. Some slaves are literate, scribes, tutors, accountants, but even they are not free. Their collars may be made of words and manners, but they are collars just the same. You see it in their posture, in their hands, in their forced smiles. By midday, you are tired enough to collapse. But there is no collapse. There is only more labor, more carrying, more mending, more obedience. Your lunch, if there is one, is humble. A crust of bread, maybe some lentils or vegetable scraps. You eat quickly, if allowed, and resume your duties. The afternoon stretches out like a second day. Your body aches. The sun begins to burn. Sometimes you're allowed inside, to sweep a courtyard, to clean the master's sandals, to tend to the chickens. But you never stop moving, not unless ordered to, not unless darkness finally arrives, and even then the work does not end. The lamps must be lit, the children tucked in, the wine poured, the doors barred. You carry water until your arms feel hollow. You wipe spills, scrub bowls, fold blankets you will never lie beneath. Only when the household begins to sleep are you dismissed. You return to your corner, your mat, your quiet breath. You do not speak of your pain. There is no point. Everyone already knows it. It lives in your shoulders, in your knees, in the back of your throat, where you swallow complaints before they form. And so the day ends as it began, with silence. You do not dream of escape. You do not dream of tomorrow. You dream only of softness, of warmth, of being still. The fire beside us crackles low now. Let its warmth reach you. Let the story slow. This is how the day ends for the enslaved in Rome. Not with violence, but with exhaustion. Not with closure, but with a slow surrender to sleep. You walk through marble halls barefoot, careful not to let your footsteps echo too loudly. The air is cool inside the villa, shaded from the Roman sun by high walls and linen curtains. The floor beneath you is smooth stone, swept daily, often by your own hands. The walls are covered in painted scenes, hunters, gods, triumphs. You never look at them too long. They are not for you. You carry a bronze basin filled with water, careful not to spill. Your tunic is plain, stained with the day's labor. You keep your head bowed. You enter rooms silently. You leave quickly. The master and his family do not thank you. Gratitude is not part of your world. In the villa, the work is never loud, but it is endless. You rise before the family stirs. You tend the lamps, replace the oils. You sweep ash from the hearths. You wash linens by hand and hang them to dry in the inner courtyard where the garden smells of herbs you are not allowed to pick. You have learned the household by memory, the timings, the moods, the patterns of each member. The young boy who likes his sandals laid out in a certain way. The matron who wants warm water to bathe in just as the sun hits her balcony. The old senator who mumbles in his sleep and demands figs at odd hours. You learn to anticipate needs, to sense discomfort before it is spoken. That is what keeps you safe. That is what keeps you here. There are rules, unspoken but carved deep into every breath you take. Never speak unless asked. Never look directly at a guest. Never correct a mistake, even when you see one. And always appear calm. You might spend hours preparing a meal you will never taste, grinding herbs with a mortar until your wrists ache, washing fruit until the skin glows, stirring pots over coals that make your eyes water. And when the dishes are served, you stand in the corner, watching, waiting, ready to refill a cup, replace a napkin, remove a plate still half full. Sometimes there are guests, men in fine robes, their voices loud with wine and debate. They speak of politics, of war, of the circus. You do not listen too closely. That is not your place. But still, your ears catch pieces, names, places, complaints, plans, secrets. You are invisible, yet always present. They forget you are there, but they expect you to know everything, to clean without being told, to appear when needed and vanish just as quickly. You learn to exist like smoke silent, drifting, always watching. There are other slaves here. A cook, older than most, who hums when he works. A girl who cares for the mistress's hair and never speaks above a whisper. A boy who runs errands with bare feet that slap against the stone. You exchange glances but rarely words. There is a closeness but not comfort. You know not to get too attached. Anyone can be sold. Occasionally, you hear laughter from the atrium. The family enjoying music or poetry, reclining on couches, sipping wine. You are called to bring more garum. To fan away flies, you do so without pause. And when dismissed, you retreat to the edge of the shadow again. In the rare moments when you are not needed, you sit alone in the servants' quarters. You mend clothing. You clean tools. You rest without relaxing. Your ears remain tuned to every sound from the household. A call could come at any time. The villa is beautiful, yes, but not for you. It is not a place of peace. It is a place of precision, and you are one cog in its great turning wheel. Even in the quiet of the night, your body stays alert. You listen for footsteps, for knocks, for the master's voice raised in the dark. You are not permitted to sleep deeply, to speak freely, to be still for too long, but you endure, because there is no other choice, and so you breathe, you serve, you bow. You remain. The fire beside us still glows. Let its warmth soften the edges of this world. This is how you live, day after day, inside a Roman villa. Not as a guest, not as a citizen, but as a shadow before the villa, before the fields, before the quiet hallways and the long days of labor. There was the market. Not a market for fruit, not for tools or pottery or fabrics. A market for people. You remember little of that day, but what you do remember stays with you like the outline of a scar. The sun was hot, high overhead, and the dust from the road clung to your skin. You were not alone. Others stood with you, men, women, even children, lined up, quiet, waiting. Some cried, some prayed. Most simply stared at the ground. You were in the capital now, Rome, the heart of the empire. But you did not see the temples or the theaters. You saw the auction block. You saw the pens behind it. You smelled sweat and oil and fear. You felt eyes on your back, many eyes, calculating, inspecting. They treated you like livestock. Buyers poked at your arms, checked your teeth, asked questions as if you were not standing there. They looked for calluses, for muscle tone, for signs of obedience or resistance. They preferred silence. If you spoke too much, they assumed you were troublesome. If you cried, they turned away. But if you stood straight, looked healthy, looked useful, they might consider you. You wore a sign around your neck, tied with coarse string. It listed your skills, your origin, your condition. Could you cook? Could you read? Were you strong enough for field labor? Pretty enough for housework? Were you branded, wounded, scarred? There was no dignity, no privacy, no appeal. You were not a person here. You were a transaction waiting to happen. You remember watching others being chosen. A boy, maybe 12, taken by a man in a fine red cloak. A young woman dragged away by a merchant with gold rings on every finger. An old man passed over again and again, his eyes dim, until he finally disappeared in the night. And then it was your turn. You were led up the steps, exposed to the crowd. The auctioneer spoke fast, his voice practiced and cheerful. He made jokes. You did not laugh. The bidding began. It was strange, hearing numbers called out for you, like being measured in coin, in weight, in seconds. You were sold. The hand that took the rope tied around your wrists did not ask your name. He did not care. He led you away like a package. You passed stalls selling olives and wine. You passed entertainers and beggars and children playing in the streets. But no one looked at you. No one stopped. You were a common sight, a shadow among many. From there, your life belonged to someone else. Not just your labor, but your path, your future. Whether you would see open fields or dim kitchens. Whether your nights would be quiet or cruel. Whether you would be beaten or praised or sold again. All of it depended on luck or fate, or the mood of the man who now owned you. Many in Rome passed through that same market. Not once, but many times. Some slaves were sold dozens of times throughout their lives. With each sale, their names might change. Their roles might shift, but the chain remained the same. You began to understand what others had told you in hushed voices before. You are never settled. You are never safe. Even when the days grow familiar, even when the master seems kind, even when the work becomes routine, everything can change with a word, with a debt, with a whim. One morning you are pouring wine. The next you are standing in that market again, stripped of everything you thought you had earned. You hear stories of slave traders with cruel reputations, of children bought to be trained as gladiators, of women sent to distant provinces, of men sold to mines where they would never be heard from again. You learn to recognize the names of bad houses, of violent buyers, of the ships that carry people away to Sicily, to Egypt, to the edge of the empire. You pray quietly, secretly, that your fate will not be one of those. You pray not for freedom. Freedom is too distant, too abstract. You pray for survival, for stillness, for the small mercy of a master who does not strike too hard or sell too quickly. Some say there were slave markets even grander in Delos, where thousands were sold in a single day. Some say the markets in Ephesus were worse, more crowded, more cruel. But Rome is its own kind of horror, orderly, efficient, blind. To the Romans walking past, the slave market is just another street, another stall to browse, another part of the city's hum. They do not hear your thoughts. They do not see your fear. They walk past the cages and auction blocks the way others pass fruit carts, without pause. And yet, for you, it is the center of your story, a place where all choices end, where names fade, where futures vanish. The fire beside us still glows. Let its crackle remind you that this is a story. One long ago, one far away, but it was real, and for many it never truly ended. You are careful, always. You speak little. You keep your head low. You watch and wait, anticipating needs before they are spoken. But even perfect obedience cannot protect you from everything. The threat of punishment is constant. It hangs in the air like dampness before a storm. It lives in glances, in footsteps approaching too quickly, in the silence that follows a master's frown. There is no warning when it comes, no trial, no explanation. If your master believes you were too slow, too careless, too bold, punishment follows. Not always with anger, sometimes with indifference, sometimes with a tired sigh as if it were simply routine. You learned this lesson early. Perhaps the first time you were struck, it was not even your fault. A dropped cup, a misunderstood command, or the anger of another slave blamed on you. But fault is irrelevant. What matters is that your body absorbs the consequence. In the countryside, punishment is often public. You have seen others tied to posts, lashed with rods until their backs ran wet. The overseer does not yell. He counts, calm and mechanical, 1, 2, 3, a pause. Then again, until the pain breaks not only skin, but will. You are told to watch, not as cruelty, but as education. You are told this is how order is kept, and you believe it, because disbelief has no place here. In the city, punishment is quieter, but no less brutal. A cook who burns a dish may find herself demoted. A slave who interrupts a guest may spend the night outside, exposed to cold and insects. A tutor who corrects his master's child may be sold the next day. But worse than pain is uncertainty, because punishment does not follow logic. It follows mood. It follows wealth. A poor man might punish harshly because he fears rebellion. A rich man might do so because he is bored. There is no standard, only precedent, and so you move carefully. You do not speak unless asked. You do not sigh too loudly, even when tired. You do not make eye contact if the master seems troubled. Some punishments leave no marks: isolation, removal from duties, the sudden silence of being ignored completely. But even these are cruel in their own way. They remind you that your entire sense of place, your safety, your identity is tied to how well you are perceived. There are worse fates than a beating. You have seen them. The mines. You hear stories whispered by older slaves of being chained underground, of digging until your hands bleed, then digging more, of darkness so complete men forget their own names, of men who entered the mines and never came out. There is also the threat of the galleys. If you are strong, the Roman navy might buy you. You will row day and night in rhythm with hundreds of others, starved, whipped, burned by sun and salt. No escape but the sea itself, or perhaps the amphitheater. If your crime is seen as rebellion, or if your master seeks spectacle, you may be set to the arena, not as a gladiator, but as entertainment. A nameless body to fall under a sword or be torn apart by beasts. All of this exists in the background of your days. Even when life is calm, even when your master is kind, the possibility always lingers. It shapes your posture, your speech, your breath. You may be allowed to love but never marry. You may bear children but not raise them. You may find joy in routine but never security. Your world is built not only on obedience but on fear. And yet you endure, because you must. You wake again the next day, and the day after. You work, you listen, you survive. The fire flickers beside us. Its warmth is steady, unlike the world you inhabit. Let it calm your breath now as we leave behind the sting of discipline. There is still more to tell, much more. Time passes slowly when every day feels the same. You do not mark the seasons with festivals or celebrations. You mark them by the ache in your joints, the deepening lines in your palms, the way your breath shortens after long hours in the field, or how your vision blurs near the firelight when mending tunics late into the evening. Your body remembers every step, every heavy basket, every climb, every punishment. You carry it all, not just in your muscles, but in your bones. The labor of a Roman slave is not designed for longevity. It is designed for utility. There is no rest when you are sick. If you wake with fever, you still rise. You do not speak of pain unless it is visible. If you cannot stand, you are dragged outside. The overseer decides what is real and what is weakness, and weakness is not tolerated. For some, sickness is a quiet exit, a cough that deepens day by day, a wound that never truly heals. You have seen men limp for months until they disappear without a word. Women who grow thinner and thinner until they vanish like smoke. Medical care, if it comes, is not for your comfort. It is to preserve function. The master may send for a physician only if he considers you valuable. The salves are bitter. The tools are sharp. The remedies are painful. You have seen broken limbs reset without comfort. Teeth pulled without warning. Fever treated by bleeding. You learn to fear healing as much as illness. There are no retirement years, no easing into old age. If you cannot work, you are considered a burden. Some masters keep aging slaves on out of habit or sentiment, but most do not. You have heard of the contracts for slaves who have been manumitted in their elder years freed, but with nothing, no home, no family. Just the weight of years and nowhere to go. Freedom in that form is a shadow. You remember an older man, once in your villa. He had a twisted back and a deep voice. He shuffled slowly, carrying kindling, cleaning lamps. He rarely spoke. But when he did, it was always about things long gone, fields he once worked, cities he once saw, people now long dead. One day he did not come to the kitchen. The others did not ask where he had gone. They simply looked at the floor and resumed their tasks. That is how it happens. You vanish without record. No gravestone. No story. No final goodbye. Just absence. The Roman world does not mourn its slaves. It replaces them quickly, efficiently. The same hands that carried you from the market will carry another. The same tunic, the same tools, the same sleeping mat. And so you begin to feel time differently. Not in years, but in what remains of your strength. You no longer think in months or seasons. You think in tasks. Can I lift the amphora today? Will my knees carry me through this shift? Can I reach the shelf without trembling? And when you cannot, you wait, quietly, silently. There are no pensions, no honor in old age, no rest homes. You are worn until you break, like a clay vessel, like a piece of rope that frays, then snaps. Some try to hide the decline. They walk faster than they should. They offer to work even when their bodies scream. But the eyes of the overseer are sharp. Sooner or later, everyone is noticed, and decisions are made. You do not fear death. Not in the way you once did. You fear fading. You fear being forgotten while still breathing. Some slaves hope for manumission freedom granted after years of service. Some masters allow it. Some even include clauses in their wills to release old slaves upon their death. But that kind of freedom is not ease. It is another kind of struggle. You are free, yes, but without a home, without money, without protection. You beg. You sweep. You disappear into the alleyways of Rome, and still you endure, because you must. Because even in the pain, there is breath. Even in the silence, there is the soft sound of the fire. A whisper of comfort in a world that offers none. So you wrap your aching limbs in your thin blanket. You close your eyes on the cold stone floor. You listen to the night, and you sleep, not because you are at peace, but because the body demands it. Let the fire beside us soothe the air again. Let its slow rhythm carry you away from the ache. And let us now step into the more hidden corners of this life, the ones where small hopes sometimes flicker. Not all moments are heavy. Even in a life bound by command and routine, by fear and fatigue, there are moments that breathe. You begin to notice them not because they are many, but because they are rare, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, fleeting, gentle, and just long enough to remember. Perhaps it is the quiet hour after the evening meal when the family retreats to their chambers and the courtyard is still. You walk slowly, carrying empty jugs or folded cloths, but no one is watching. The sky is a deep blue. The stars flicker above the tiled roof. The fountain drips softly nearby. You take a breath and let it stay. You are not free, but for one moment no one calls your name. Or maybe it is in the kitchen, late at night. A cook hands you a bit of roasted fig left from the master's table. No words. Just a glance, a quick movement of the hand. You eat it slowly. You savor every bite. The sweetness surprises you. It reminds you that taste exists, that you are still alive inside this skin. Sometimes the other slaves talk when the work is done and the moon is high. You share stories, though never too loudly. Stories of your childhood, of the town where you were born, of your mother's voice, though you can barely remember it. Someone hums an old song. Another tells a joke passed from household to household. You laugh quietly, carefully. There is no security in these moments, but there is warmth, a kind of defiance, not the loud, dangerous kind, the soft kind, the kind that keeps the soul from crumbling. You learn the names of plants in the garden. You learn which stones in the courtyard get warm first in the morning. You remember the pattern of the tiles on the atrium floor. You find rhythm in the way the brooms sweep. You create patterns in your steps, your breath, your work. You find your own ways to cope. A small carved pebble in your pocket, always with you. A scrap of string tied around your wrist. A silent word you say each morning before entering the master's chamber. No one knows. No one needs to. These are the things you keep, your own. Some slaves, especially those who work closely with their masters, are treated more gently. Perhaps because of trust. Perhaps because of usefulness. A tutor who teaches the children. A secretary who keeps accounts. A healer who knows herbs. Their lives are still bound, but there is less sting, fewer blows, more words. If you are lucky, truly lucky, your master may speak of manumission. Not often, not soon, but someday, perhaps after years of loyal service, perhaps in his will. You have heard of this happening. A man freed in his 30s, allowed to open a small shop. A woman freed and married by another freedman. Stories carried like fragile flames, protected and repeated in whispers. But you do not hope too loudly. Hope can be dangerous. Hope can make the days heavier. Instead, you let it exist like a coin tucked deep in your robes. You carry it. You do not look at it too often. And sometimes the greatest kindness is simply the absence of cruelty. A day with no blows. A night without shouts. A week without the fear of being sold. In that absence, your body softens. Your breath slows. You begin to notice the fire again, the one in the hearth, the one inside you. And you learn something that only the enslaved truly understand, that even in a life completely owned, the mind can still find shelter, that the heart can still beat its own rhythm, that the soul, though bruised, does not forget how to feel. There are slaves who sing while working, not loudly, not defiantly, but softly. The melody blends with the rustle of leaves, the creak of wagons, the hush of footsteps. And in that sound, there is something no master can touch. You are not a rebel. You are not a hero. You are not free, but you are still a person, and that matters. Even if no one sees it, even if the world forgets it. The fire beside us burns low now. It has heard your story, your steps, your silence. Let it warm you. Let it remind you. There is more to come. You do not remember the last time you said their names aloud. Perhaps you have whispered them in the dark, your mother's voice, your brother's laughter, your child's hand in yours. But years grind the edges of memory. You hold on though it hurts. Because to forget them completely would be worse than the pain of remembering. In slavery, family is not sacred. It is not protected. It is not even acknowledged. You may have a child born beneath the same roof where you serve. You may carry them for 9 months, birth them in pain and silence, return to work before you are healed. But that child is not yours, not truly. They belong to your master. You may love them. You may feed them, soothe them, rock them to sleep on your chest. But their fate is not in your hands. One day a visitor may come, a merchant, a senator's wife, a slave trader looking for youth, and without warning the child is gone, sold, given away, moved to another estate in another part of the empire. No papers, no explanation, just a command and silence. You scream inside, but you do not show it. You cannot. There is no room for grief in your tasks. The bread must still be baked, the animals still fed, the floor still swept. You carry your sorrow like a wound that never bleeds. For men, it is the same. You may father a child and never see them. You may pass by a girl in the garden whose face looks like yours, but you cannot ask. You cannot know. Bonds are dangerous. Attachment is discouraged. And for those brought from distant provinces, the losses go deeper. You may have left a family across the sea, taken by force or sold in famine. You wonder if they are alive, if they remember your name, if they think you're dead. You will never know. The Roman state does not recognize families among the enslaved. You are property. You cannot marry, not in law. You cannot claim kin. You cannot inherit or protect. The bond you feel is yours alone, invisible to the law, untouchable by justice. Still, bonds form. You find comfort where you can. A woman who treats you like a sister. A boy who reminds you of a cousin you once had. You share food. You tell stories. You touch shoulders when passing in narrow halls. For a moment it feels like family. But it is fragile. Always. One day they are gone. Moved. Punished. Dead. Sold to another house in another city. And no one explains. You keep going. Because what else can you do? You do not cry. You do not ask. You carry the memory in your work, your breath, your stillness. You have seen some masters treat slave families kindly, allowing parents and children to remain together. But this is not a right. It is a whim, and whims change. You have also seen cruelty in its quietest form. A child growing up in the same house as their enslaved mother, but not knowing her as such. She changes the boy's clothes. She feeds him. She watches him sleep, but he calls another woman mother, and she cannot correct him. Sometimes you imagine a world where families stay whole, where a child's laughter means security, not risk, where love is not a danger, but imagination is not armor. So you carry your sorrow quietly, like others before you, like others still to come. You plant memories like seeds in your mind, voices, faces, moments of joy, and you water them with silence, because to speak them aloud might break you. The fire burns low now. Its glow is steady. Let it honor the ones you have lost. Let it carry their names in warmth. There are 2 more paths ahead. Stay with me? When your life is not your own, belief becomes a private fire. Not the great ceremonies of the Roman elite, not the public sacrifices with garlands and polished altars, but something smaller, older, hidden. Among the enslaved, faith takes many forms. Some believe in the gods of Rome, Jupiter, Mars, Minerva, if only because the household does. They light lamps for Vesta. They murmur thanks to Mercury for small victories. But these gods feel distant, too proud, too far above. So instead you whisper to others, to the gods of your homeland whose names the Romans do not know, to ancestors, to river spirits, to household ghosts, to the wind in the trees, to the silence in the dark. You carry a small token of bone, a charm, a stone wrapped in cloth. You do not show it. You never speak of it. But you touch it when you are afraid. You sleep with it near your chest. Some leave offerings where no one sees. A bit of bread behind the hearth. A drop of oil beside the garden wall. A coin buried under a loose stone in the courtyard. Tiny rituals, repeated without fail. Not for favor, but for balance, to keep misfortune from tipping too far. You have seen others pray in their own languages, their lips moving silently at sunrise. You have seen men make signs over wounds, not for healing, but for protection. You have seen a woman mark her doorway with crushed herbs, though no one asks why. You do not speak of curses, but you feel them. If a bowl cracks for no reason, if the lamps blow out too quickly, if a bird flies against a window and dies, these are signs. You do not ignore them. You do not mock them. Even the masters sometimes sense it. You have seen them call for augurs to read the entrails of birds. You have seen them wear amulets under their robes. They pretend to be above fear, but they too have shadows. In the slaves' quarters you hear stories passed from mouth to mouth, of ghosts that walk the halls, slaves who died unjustly, and still roam in search of peace, of dreams that predict illness, of voices heard in the stillness before dawn, of a pale figure seen near the garden wall the night before a fire broke out. And always, always you listen, not because you believe every word, but because belief is not about truth. It is about comfort. You remember an old woman who lived in the villa once. No one knew her age. She worked slowly, spoke little, and always wore 3 blue beads around her neck. When someone asked her why, she said nothing, but her eyes were calm. After she died, a younger girl wore those beads for weeks, until she too was sold. You still remember the feeling of those nights when the wind howled strangely, when the dogs barked for no reason, when the fire burned too high or too blue. On those nights no one slept deeply. Everyone felt it, even the masters. You believe in your own way, not in salvation, not in justice, but in the rhythm of things, the way your body knows when to step aside, the way silence can feel full of meaning, the way a dream clings to you long after you wake. There are things the Romans do not write down, things not found in scrolls or speeches, but they are real because they shape the world of those beneath notice. You pray not to change your fate, but to keep it from growing worse. You pray that the child in the next room will not be taken. You pray that your name will be remembered by someone, even if you are forgotten by history. And when you cannot pray, you simply breathe, slowly, quietly, with the fire's glow on your face. This, too, is a kind of faith that tomorrow will come, that you will still be here, that your story matters even if no one else sees it. We are almost there now. Only one final step remains. There is no grave for you, no stone carved with dates or names, no wreath, no visitors, no stories passed down. Your body may have returned to the earth quietly, without song. Your name may have faded before the sun had fully set that day, and yet you lived. You rose each morning to the weight of chains that were not always metal. You learned to move, to breathe, to endure in a world that never asked your name, only your labor. You served households that recorded their own glories in marble and scrolls. You stood in the background of paintings, unnamed. You cleaned the floors of men who conquered provinces. You bore the children of masters who called you property. And still you sang to those children at night, even when your own were taken. You were everywhere in Rome, beneath the villas, beneath the markets, beneath the temples. You built the empire not as architects or generals, but as hands. Quiet, unseen, indispensable hands. The streets were swept because you rose early. The baths were warm because you stoked the fires. The ink flowed on ledgers because you ground it. The bread was kneaded. The lamps were trimmed. The beasts were fed. The machines of wealth and power spun on your silence. And yet there is no chapter for you. Not in the books the Romans wrote. Not in the statues they carved. Only fragments remain, scribbled records of a sale, a note in a will, a name scratched on a wall. And still you lived. Not in glory, not in ease, but in breath and memory, in the sheer act of remaining upright. You had thoughts. You had dreams. You knew beauty when you saw it, the way the sunlight struck the garden wall, the hush of dawn, the touch of cool water on your hands. You smiled. You cried. You laughed in the dark when no one could hear. You held someone's hand once and felt, if only for a moment, something like peace. That, too, is history. Not the kind written by victors, but the kind remembered by firelight, soft, flickering, true. You may have died with nothing, but even now, thousands of years later, someone speaks of you. Not your name, not your face, but your burden, your quiet strength, your stolen years. And in that remembering, you are no longer lost. You are no longer just a shadow beneath the marble. You are real. You are heard. You are not alone. The fire is low now. Let it dim. Let the sea of sleep take you. Your story is done. Rest now. You are safe. You are free